This current administration is doing nothing but walking into gun stores, mom and pop gun stores, going after the simple little small minor paperwork errors that people are making and trying to shut those gun stores down permanently who've been in existence for decades. And what we're doing is by bringing this lawsuit, we're saying, you know what, you need to stop that. What Congress says this is what you're supposed to do. There are a set of laws there and they should follow those laws, not step outside those boundaries. And so we're trying to put them back in those boundaries and say this is enough. It's impossible for anyone to do what we do and not make any mistakes at all. You get people that walk into the gun store to fill out a 4473, which is the firearms transaction record. There's 100 ways a person can mess up this form, if not more than that. There are 100 different inputs that you actually put on the form. Even customers make mistakes when it comes to their name, their middle name or their first name. They reverse it. On that little box that says county, they put country. That does not mean that that person is going to get handed a firearm and they're not supposed to. They're not a prohibited person. And so their license should not get revoked just for that simple little minor mistake. I'm actually getting phone calls from gun stores all around the country, as far as like Oregon, as close as Houston. You're talking mom and pop gun stores. Grandparents, great-grandparents have owned this store, and all of a sudden now, ATF comes in and inspect them, find a little paperwork error. Maybe they've made the same type of error because they didn't catch it themselves, and they're wanting to shut them down. And this is the only way that I can help them is by filing a lawsuit, kind of being on the offensive instead of the defensive. I think we're assisting all the gun stores in the country in getting the ATF back into the box it need to be put back into. I'm so grateful that I was able to sit down and talk with TPPF. This organization is the one organization that I thought would actually stand up for Texans and stand up for all Americans in the United States and fight the federal government when they're overstepping their bounds.
Your business is going to have technical problems. There's no question about it. Pacific Office Automation is your guy because problem solving is our passion. Every business is unique, no matter how big or how small the problem. From copiers and printers, telephone systems, managed IT, print services, and more, we offer integrated, streamlined office solutions to keep your office humming. With Pacific Office Automation, it's problem solved. Visit pacificoffice.com today to find out more.
Whether it's a typical traffic stop or you're just involved in a use of force incident, encounters with law enforcement can be scary and stressful. In the heat of the moment, you may inadvertently say something you don't mean or make an inconsistent statement. These are red flags for officers, and if they think you're lying or your story doesn't add up, they might arrest you and let the criminal justice system decide your fate. Police officers are trained to get information from you without making the interaction seem like a formal interrogation. But remember, from the moment an officer arrives on scene, everything you say and everything you do will be scrutinized in court. The prosecuting attorney will attempt to use anything and everything against you. So what do you say? You say, I invoke my right to remain silent, and then let your attorney interact with law enforcement on your behalf. One important note though, do not throw common sense out the window. For example, if the intruder's hiding somewhere in your house when the police arrive, or if you saw the perpetrator pitch his weapon into your backyard, quickly tell the police and then stop talking. You might ask, what about my rights? What if the police never read me my Miranda rights? Miranda rights is the common name for a collection of rights contained in the Miranda warnings, given to suspects when they're placed under arrest. The warning comes from a 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda v. Arizona. In that case, the court held that statements from a custodial interrogation would not be admissible unless proper procedural safeguards were in place to protect the defendant's Fifth Amendment rights. We've all seen these warnings on TV and movies. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and so on. So do police have to read you your rights? No. It's important to note that officers are not required to read you these rights unless you're in custody and subjected to interrogation. If the police show up to a crime scene and start asking you general questions and you voluntarily tell them everything that happened, those statements can be used against you regardless of the Miranda warnings, because you're not in custody. If you're put in handcuffs, but you say something incriminating on your own without being questioned, those statements can and will be used against you because you're not being interrogated. You're just starting to spout off. This is why it's imperative that you know your rights, and you shouldn't rely on the police to read them to you. Affirmatively invoke your rights. Say, I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and my right to my attorney. Once you do that, the police legally shouldn't continue questioning you without your attorney present. But remember, there's a second part to this equation. After invoking your rights, you must exercise those rights. That means you have to keep your mouth closed. Protect yourself. Don't let the legal system take advantage of you after an incident. And Law Shield members, if you've been involved in a self-defense incident, remember to call the emergency hotline and speak with your independent program attorney.
I'm a U.S. Army veteran with a strong sense of duty and respect for our system of government. After 12 years, I was honorably discharged and decided I would fulfill the American dream of entrepreneurship and open up a gun shop in Austin, Texas. At my shop, I teach people to be law-abiding and how to safely use their firearm. On page 46, going to talk about Penal Code Section 46.02. The day that ban went into effect, I went into my local ATF in Austin and turned over my bump stock because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I wasn't going down without a legal fight. So that's why I reached out to NCLA.
NCLA is representing Michael Cargill because federal agencies do not have the power to rewrite statutes. Bump stocks are not machine guns. If Congress wants to change the law and ban bump stocks, it certainly can do so. But we can't have the executive branch rewriting a statute and putting people in jail for up to 10 years.
It's a problem because, this government agency has said, you know what, something that is legal is now illegal, and we're going to confiscate it from you, and we're not going to compensate you for it, and you're going to become a criminal.
The goal of our case here is to tell the ATF that they can't get away with this kind of administrative lawmaking. This isn't constitutionally permissible, and this goes against everything that our nation was founded on.
The bump stock ban turned innocent law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight, even though they were compliant with the statute. And that's not right.
This case is not about where you stand on bump stocks. It's about the rule of law. It's about whether an agency can rewrite a statute and turn a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. If the ATF can ban bump stocks, any agency can ban anything.
Day, Austin, Texas, live music capital of the world. Let's praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. All right, so, man, I tell you what, there's news going on all around the country. So gun sales have increased in Florida since the constitutional carry law has gone into effect. Man, you know what, those Florida people, I tell you, it's shaped like a gun. But Florida, I don't know. We'll see what happens as gun sales rise in Florida for the constitutional carry law. Also, over in Oregon, a federal judge has ruled that Oregon's voter-approved gun control measure, one of the toughest in the nation, is constitutional. Man, we're going to see how this stuff plays out as it makes its way, hopefully to the Supreme Court of the United States. We'll see what happens. Maybe the Oregon Supreme Court will overrule. Don't know. I don't know how that court sits, but we'll see how this stuff plays out. I hope this stuff is not contagious and does not take over the rest of the country. Here in Texas, nothing has changed as far as gun laws, but there's a lot of funny business going on with the special session in Texas. So I think there's going to be another special session because they still have to try to impeach or get rid of the AG, the Texas Attorney General. So we'll see how that plays out. Also, we have inside the studio, and Gary's got to help me out here. We have inside the studio a special guest. Gary, who do we have?
We got Dan Hollaway from Drinking Bros, and we're going to be talking a lot about conservative censorship in media groups, the military, gun training and familiarity, and if it should be taught in public schools, stuff like that. That's what the premise of the show is today.
Man, let's get right into it then. Let's talk about some gun training.
Well, real quick first, can you give everybody kind of an overview of who you are and what you do and how you got into media with Drinking Bros and all of that?
Sure, yeah. So I was in the 82nd Airborne as an infantryman for a while. Once I got done with that, I kind of puttered around in private security, got a couple of degrees and a master's degree. I was working for the government for a while, but it sucks, obviously. Not working for the government sucks, right? I don't think it should exist, but we'll cover that later. So I was going to work. I just accepted a new position in Intel, and my buddy Jared Taylor, who's one of the founders of Black Rifle Coffee, hit me up. He was like, why don't you just come work for us? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do at a coffee company. But we figured it out. I was there for a while. I was the VP of marketing there for a couple of years. Then moved on to the podcast after a while. It just was a bit more up my alley than dealing with customers.
So Drinking Bros, what is that? You guys drink on the show?
Well, we do, yeah. But the point of the show, the point of Drinking Bros was Jared Taylor's original intent was that kind of to reestablish the camaraderie we have overseas. And the tagline for the show was "Never drink alone," right? Okay. So it was kind of an impetus to get back with your buddies and hang out. We not everybody drinks, right? Some people smoke crack, like Hunter Biden, for example. Right. This is true. He could drink too. I actually don't know about that, but
drinks and smokes crack.
Well, good for him. To be honest, if you could pick one president's family member to party with, who would it be?
Actually, the Bush daughters. Those chicks, they know how to party.
Why do you say that? What's the story there?
They partied.
Well, they got hemmed up here because they went to UT, right?
Yeah. They went to Texas A&M.
A&M, that's right. Yeah.
I remember one boyfriend got locked up one time, and she, the presidential limousine went to pick him up, and she bailed him out of jail.
What's the point of being president if you can't get your daughters out of jail? Especially a guy like George W. Bush got a DUI in the early 70s. Do you know how hard it was to get a DUI back then? Like you'd have to drive through the front of somebody's fucking house. So respect to him, yeah. But Hunter Biden seems like it'd be a lot of fun to hang out with.
Yeah, I will say that whenever I see the him being memed, I'm always like, dude, this could easily have happened to me at one point.
Yeah, we don't even necessarily know that he's liberal. I've never heard him talk about politics before. All I know for a fact is that he's a crackhead, which
Well, and he slept with a Chinese spy.
Yeah, but
Fang.
No. That's a congressman in California.
That's the one that said he's going to nuke the citizens, right?
That was Eric Swalwell that did that.
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah, he's going to nuke the citizens. I wonder where he got that idea from.
I think Hunter was just Russian prostitutes, my man.
Underage ones, too.
Well,
allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly on that one, but definitely prostitutes.
Didn't he also sleep with his dead brother's niece or his dead brother's
wife?
Allegedly.
Wife.
Dead brother's wife. Yeah, he and his dead brother's wife had an affair right after he died of brain cancer, which, hey, man.
That's terrible.
You know what I mean? Like you're just providing comfort to a widow at that point, I think.
Well, you got to have what you got to have.
Yeah. I don't know what the Bible says about that, but.
Well, I don't think that we should be bringing people's personal lives into politics, though,
Well, I mean, how else do you determine if somebody's a good person or not? Right?
I'm being totally a smart ass, dude.
Well, some stuff I don't think is necessarily relevant. Like if George W. Bush's past, for example, they gave him a lot of shit because he was an alcoholic cokehead back in the day.
Yeah.
But it turns out that the bigger problem was he was a fucking retard. Like the drugs and alcohol had nothing to do with it. He was just an idiot.
Yeah.
Right? So,
I like George, though. I thought he was a cool president.
I mean, he
even,
was
even a D student can be president of the United States.
Oh yeah, well, if your dad and grandfather are billionaires, yeah, it helps.
Yeah,
right?
nepotism works. Did you guys see that recently? They were re-memeing that gaffe that he made about the Iraq War.
Which one?
Oh yeah, where are you?
You want to do it? You want to say it?
I can't remember it exactly.
The one where it says "Watch this drive" or whatever.
No, not that.
Because that's really funny.
We're gonna destroy terrorism. Now watch this drive. And he turns around and just cranks a golf swing.
Was it the one where he held the binoculars up to his eyes, but the lens caps were still on? I mean, there's a lot to choose from.
No, it was a more recent one after he wasn't president, and he said it was something about, we can't just invade Iraq because of Ukraine. Isn't that what it was?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that was in
the
between.
biggest Freudian slip in the history of mankind.
He even laughs about it after.
Yeah, he's like,
most presidents, when they retire, take on some kind of cause, right? Like Obama, I don't know what the hell he's doing, actually.
He's probably still president.
He might be, yeah. But Clinton had the Clinton Global Initiative. Usually there's something you move on to. I think George W. Bush was just sitting in the bathtub painting dogs and stuff.
Yeah, he was an avid painter.
Good for him for just going away. Nobody wanted to see that guy anymore, right?
Well, Mike, you like him. You like Bush?
I like the Bushes.
Why is that?
Hey, they kept it going. They definitely kept it going.
Kept what going?
The wars. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Well, they did. Was there any real big gun legislation, anti-gun legislation that was pushed during the Bush administration?
Not necessarily, but we got something from Reagan, but no, not necessarily from the Bushes.
A lot of
Republicans
Republicans
actually signed some stuff in. It went into effect on his administration.
Well, I know you have qualms with the Trump admin because of the bump stock stuff. Right. Obviously,
that opened the door for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Bush administration presided over the largest expansion of the federal government in the history of the country, right?
Which is really bad.
The Department of Homeland Security.
Which is really
Patriot
bad.
Act.
Patriot Act.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Fuck off, dude.
Yeah.
But there are no real conservative. I think Thomas Massey's probably the only real conservative of any sort left in American politics, at least at the federal level. I would be surprised to hear of anybody else. There's a lot of grandstanders, right? Jim Jordan's all right sometimes. But politicians
Ohio. Hometown represent.
Yeah, I think he lives in downtown Dayton somewhere.
Shout
right?
out to
Just
Dave
kidding.
Chappelle, Ohio.
He lives in a commune, though.
Does he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a hippie commune in southern Ohio.
In Yellow Springs.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Probably not a bad place to live.
All right, let's talk guns. All right, let's talk about schools. How can we secure our schools? What do you think the suggestion is? What do you think we should do?
Well, look, any conversation about that's got to take place at multiple levels, right?
Okay.
Like you're not gonna. There's not a piece of machinery you're gonna ban. There's not a style of defense you're gonna teach that's gonna eradicate something like that, because the problem is in the heart and souls of young men, particularly, right? But sight hardening is the first and most obvious answer to that question. Nobody should be able to walk through that front door unless they are clearly identified, right? That seems like pretty obvious. But then, just as the case with, let's say you were trying to secure your computer network, but your server is right up here in plain view for everybody to just walk up and touch it, then that's not really secure. So even then, when you do sight hardening, you're depending on teachers who don't know shit about security to make sure that all the security features are in place and functioning properly. Right. You know what I mean? So I think we can probably, if we stop sending $100 billion a year to Ukraine, afford to put a couple of resource officers with assault rifles, if that's a real thing. What's an assault rifle? Is there one up here?
I don't know what the term means.
There's an assault shotgun up there. It's an assault weapon is a weapon you can assault with, right? Which is
every weapon ever.
Correct. Oh shit.
It's stapler. It's an
assault stapler. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a verb, not a fucking.
I do think you could put QRFs in certain areas, and you could have armed officers on site. Why would we not do that, to be honest?
Here's what I think. I think what we should do is use certain type of glass to make sure, because there's glass that we've actually tested back when you had shootings way back in the early 2000s. I did a whole news story on testing glass for schools, and that is so that when the shooter shows up, they're firing shots trying to get into the school. That round is hitting the glass and it's ricocheting, it's coming back. You can shoot out the glass, but they can't shoot in. And that's also locking all the doors, make sure the door is secured. The person that's going to be responsible for locking all the doors is the police officer that you assign to the school. And you can also have camera. Most schools have cameras anyway. Give them access to that. lock up the school, secure the school. They check the doors, make sure all the doors are locked and all secure, and then they can sit and monitor the cameras, for the rest of the day. Most of your school shootings happen the first 3-4 hours of school. It always happens in the morning. It's very rare that a school shooting happens in the afternoon. They always happen between, 8 o'clock in the morning, between 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I think the only one I've seen in the afternoon was it was at a university, though. Right. It was in Oregon, I believe. It was.
It's very rare.
Yeah, it's
very
it's
rare.
not.
Happens
Yeah,
in the afternoon.
It's usually between 8 and 10 a.m.
Yeah, so those first few hours are very important, and we should have a police officer or a security officer or an armed guard, someone who's actually proficient in a firearm, and make sure they're actually doing their job in securing the schools and protecting the babies. The problem is we're using police officers as resource officers to discipline kids at the high school, and we're not protecting the babies at the elementary school and middle school. And I think that's going to be the problem, is using them as disciplinary actions as resource officers and not police officers as security.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't help that a lot of these schools at the high school level look like a prison. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen the schools in Southern California, but they look like prisons down there.
Right. And that's why the kids act like that.
Yeah. There's something to be said about that pipeline from middle school to prison.
You treat them like that, they're going to act like that.
Yeah. But as far as preventing unnecessary death, that's all of these measures to stop it immediately are, it's like putting out the electrical fire, but the exposed wire is still over there. You know what I mean? Like at some point we're going to have to nut up and do something about these kids that are like they're
something in Uvalde should have never happened.
What do you mean about doing something about the kids?
Me?
Yeah.
You're asking me? Well, there is I'll talk about military veterans for a while. So the way that we've treated post-traumatic stress in America is about the dumbest way you can treat it. Particularly when men who mostly define their existence through purpose, and their purpose through the exercise of their masculinity, which is in its purest form to provide and protect, right? For whomever you consider to be your family. It's something called kin selection. So you decide who's a member of your family. For most patriotic people, it's anybody that's in this country, right? And the exercise of providing for and protecting these people, that is your identity as a human being. And once you strip somebody of their identity, the first thing that happens is a deep nihilism begins to set in. You don't feel you don't feel like you have ownership over your own life. You don't feel like you're providing any kind of service. And the only way to stand out at that point is to do something crazy. Or people become deeply depressed when they lack purpose. So when we've treated these military veterans who come back from service and they're all fucked up and we're like, oh, it's okay, buddy. That's bullshit. That's completely wrong. I mean, what you're doing is you're taking somebody that already feels useless and making them feel more useless. What you should have done was train them up and put them in a fucking school to keep kids from getting shot up, because they would have gladly done that stuff. Now, when the nihilism sets in, it takes a number of different forms. It's the same thing that leads to depression and suicide or mass shooting or joining terrorist groups or any of this stuff. It's all the same symptom of the same disease, right? It is a disconnect from society. It is a lack of empathy brought on by self-hatred. That's how it happens. And once you start that process to put somebody back into society and give them responsibility to protect other people, that's where healing begins for these folks, right? So when we told little kids that it's okay to identify with the things that are wrong with you and make that your identity, we told them that it's okay to lose, that just participating is good enough. That's all bullshit. We lost our identity. Masculinity lost its identity as a biological tool to provide and protect for our community. And we're seeing the fallout from that now.
It's a thing of, not everyone's going to win. Not everyone's winners. You're going to lose, certain situations. You're going to lose battles. You're going to lose wars. You're not going to be successful in certain things. There may be some stuff that you are successful in, but then a lot of things you're not going to be successful in. And that's reality of it. Not everyone gets a participation trophy, I think, is what you're talking about.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's winners and losers in life. in individual instances, and then I guess cascading over the broader course of life. But certainly in one instance or another, somebody's going to be a winner and somebody's going to be a loser in a situation. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually how we get the best out of people, is to show them that it's okay to lose, but it's better to win, right? And if you're okay with losing, what drives you? I mean, you can see it on their faces these days. That you can see a couple of competitive kids out there in any group, and their competitive nature is constantly under attack. Like they're people are trying to tamp down their competitive nature. But that's how we built all this stuff. Right. That's why we're here today. You know what I mean? So as far as how to repair kids, give them purpose again. Take them to a homeless shelter and let them see what real fucked up looks like, instead of these Pacific Northwestern kids who have never faced any real hardship in their life, thinking that they're somehow oppressed, like 25-year-old white kids.
You need to start spanking them again.
A good slap in the mouth would be nice, you know?
Yeah, I think.
I got my ass spanked all the time, didn't I, Mom?
Right on.
Yep, I sure did, all the time, like every day. It was actually, I think, pretty formative for me. And at the very least, even if I still was rebellious and didn't listen,
I don't believe you.
It at least toughened me up.
She says it jokingly.
Me? Are you kidding?
Oh no. Okay, never mind.
She's over
all the time.
She's over there smacking a truncheon in her hand right now, just getting. As soon as this show's over, she's gonna crack you in the fucking head.
No, I mean that's something that we talked about when I was a teenager and whatnot. Was I was totally out of control. I was like a juvenile delinquent. I got arrested for felony breaking and entering when I was 18 or 19. I didn't listen to anybody, and I think part of that was because the only person disciplining me was my mom. My dad didn't really do shit, and then one time he did try to actually discipline me, and I tried to stab him with a piece of glass, and lack of respect for authority, lack of real male role models, masculinity. I'm in agreement with what you're saying, and I never really thought about took it the extra step there with the self-hatred thing, which is interesting because that is absolutely what develops into a lack of empathy. And also the participation trophy stuff, and the enabling of the vets and saying, oh yeah, it's okay, you can just fucking smoke pot on the sidewalk for the rest of your life and you have to have no purpose.
It's like, so a couple of key things.
It seems like it's by design. That's what I was getting
certainly
at.
Yeah, the Marxist infiltration of the West is certainly by design,
and that started, people don't realize, it started in the 40s.
It started in the 20s. There were competing communist and national socialist parties in America in the 1920s.
At the college level, I guess I should have prefaced that.
Well, I mean, that's where it started, right? It began at the universities because of visiting professors and stuff like that. Those ideas kind of fostered.
And a lot of those people were kicked out of Europe, obviously.
Yeah. Surprisingly, Michel Foucault was never kicked out of Europe, despite the fact that he was traveling around raping children the whole time he was writing about, postmodernism and stuff like that.
Yeah. You might have an idea on this, and then we can go back to guns, but I just really quickly want to ask you this. Is there like an intrinsic connection between pedophilia and communism?
That's a good question. I don't know that.
Because a lot of the gender theories and queer theory people that have really pushed communism and started those movements also they're almost all pedophiles.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a doctrinal connection. I think the connection is probably that it's like the last paragraph of 1984. In the end, the party would say that 2 + 2 = 5, and you would have to believe it because the logic of their position demands it, right? Like, there can be no truth except for your own personal truth. And that is an attack on our epistemology. It's why you can't have any kind of political debate anymore. There is no such thing as political debate anymore because we don't agree on the fucking facts.
Right.
Like there is a list of facts we call our epistemology, and that is not a thing anymore. So we're just shouting competing worldviews at each other, but there's no conversation going on. And that's to infiltrate a society that has strong values. That's the first step. That's called battlefield preparation. The first thing you have to do is make people not agree on what they actually believe in principle. And then you can make them believe anything you want. So I think it's more an offshoot of that. I don't think it's necessarily intentionally pedophilia, right?
Okay.
But that is certainly, it draws those kind of people. because they're like, it's the slippery slope thing, right? It's like, oh, fucking LGBTQIA we can fuck kids now. Here we go. But you know what I mean? That's pretty much how it goes. Every single time in every society in human history that's gone through this process, it always ends in pedophilia.
That's why I asked, because that seems to be the end game right now, and it seems to be how a lot of things turn out.
Well, there's also, as far as communism goes, or socialism or any other Marxist stuff, they believe that all property is property of the state, including your mind, including your children, right? Your children don't belong to you; they belong to the state.
Well, now what? And we're seeing that now, where teachers can decide if a kid that's 6 years, 7 years, 8 years old can have a gender surgery. But
I have no idea what the fuck you guys are talking about. But I want to bring this back to. I want to ask you about the military and ask you about what about LGBTQ, LMNOP in the military, and how we're going from that. We went from gays in the military to now transgender in the military. There's a transgender major, lieutenant colonel. What are your thoughts on all that stuff?
I think somebody that's a man that thinks they're a woman is mentally ill, and usually mental illnesses prohibit you from service or holding a gun in the first place. Probably, that seems legit.
Right. That's common sense.
The end.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing else to fucking say about that. Right. We're trusting people in command structure and with weapons and making command decisions in military conflicts who
they can't even figure out their own fucking gender.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty scary.
That if it is indeed a legit case of gender dysphoria, then that's sad. That sucks.
Well,
man.
that's the thing that look. So you say that,
but it's also sad if you don't if you fucking have your blood's too thin and you can't go to war for that because you'll bleed out too quickly.
Right.
Like if you're on blood thinning medication, you can't deploy.
Well, what I want to say here is that if you say something like, gender dysphoria is a mental illness, then people all of a sudden think that you hate people that have gender dysphoria, and that's not the case. Why would you? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, like if you say schizophrenia is a mental illness, we probably shouldn't have schizophrenic people in uniform carrying weapons. I think most people would agree with that.
Right, but that doesn't mean that those are bad people.
Right.
Yeah, we don't affirm the voices that they hear in there.
Well, we don't like
if
somebody is schizophrenic and they say, "Oh, I've got this imaginary friend, Doug, and he looks like a fucking giant lizard person." We don't sew a lizard head onto a human being. We're like, here's Doug. He can follow you around now just to validate your fucking thought. Like, get the fuck out of here.
So where's the line that you draw with firearm ownership? Who determines if somebody's mentally ill or not?
That's the question, right? So here, this is the conversation I have mostly with conservatives, because liberals, I think, are either completely ignorant about guns or they just want to ban them all.
They're just checked out.
Okay. Yeah, they just or they just are ambivalent about it.
Yeah, they're the least knowledgeable.
Yeah, certainly. But I will say this to conservative folks or to libertarians, which is probably closer to what I am. I'm pretty sure that everybody who can hear the sound of my voice knows at least one person who should not own a gun, right? But who adjudicates that? Is it this? It cannot ever be the state. The state cannot be in charge of adjudicating who does and doesn't have the right to defend themselves, because the Second Amendment explicitly gives us the right to defend ourselves against the government. Right? So the government cannot be in charge of who gets to own or possess or use firearms. It just can't be like that. I don't know the answer to the question, but it can't be. I know what it can't be. It cannot be the state.
Okay, I got one for you. So I had a mother give me a call one day, and her son, who's an adult, was buying a firearm, here in the gun store. And so she said, "Hey, my son just broke up with his girlfriend, who he has a kid with. They're having, he's dealing with it really hard. He wants to get a gun. I don't think he should have a gun right now. Can you please not sell him the firearm?" And this is when he was on delay. The background check was delayed. So I said, okay. The way I handled that was, I have to listen to the mother, and trust what she's telling me. And I told her, I said, well, I need you to try to get him some help. Either contact authorities, do what I need you to do, get him in the system, get him some assistance or whatever, and then I'll hold on to the firearm. We're not going to transfer it to him. So then I did that for like a couple of weeks. And I'll be honest with you, the guy came in, tried to pick it up, and I told him he was delayed. He wasn't, but I told him he was delayed. So I lied to him. And so, and I called the mother and said, okay, I'm giving you a little more time. Have you gotten him some help? Have you contacted authorities? Have you done something? The ball's in your court. I need you to do something on the family side, to get him some help. If, you say that he's, having some issues, there's something going on. So then I waited a little while, and I contacted mother again because I was watching the date when he was going to be able to, come back to the store. When I told him he can come back into the store to pick up his firearm. So I said, okay, hey, ma'am, it's getting real close. He's going to want to pick up this gun. Have you guys, gone that extra mile to, reach out to someone, get him some assistance, get him someone to talk to, a therapist, whatever. Have you done anything? And she said, oh, well, we're on vacation right now. And we're down, at the beach. I said, okay, well, when you guys coming back? So we're going to be coming back tomorrow. And I said, well, he's going to want to pick up his firearm. What do you want me to do? She said, okay, well, we'll take care of it tomorrow. We'll come with him to pick it up. I said, okay, fine. So I waited. I let some more time go by, days go by. And I called her back again. Hey, what's going on? He's called the one he wants to pick up his firearm. Have you guys done what you need to do? She said, oh, well, we extended our vacation. And so we're going to be coming back, now we're coming back. And I said, and I thought about that. It's like, okay, you're extending your vacation. So if this was an emergency, something that you felt that your son should not have gotten the firearm for, it's a fine line, between me and holding up and, his Second Amendment right, to a firearm. And if they thought that it was something very serious, then, they should have acted and done something. So I went ahead and transferred the gun to him. Now nothing, to my knowledge, nothing bad has happened, but parents, family members have got to step up to the plate. If you know something's going on with your family member, you got to step up to the plate and do something to get them some help or some assistance. Because I can only do so much.
To that point, though, the mom was the one that was trying to infringe on his Second Amendment right.
Possibly.
I guess I'm making kind of a jump there, but
possibly, and I have no way of knowing.
No way of knowing. There's no way of confirming that. There's nothing you can do there. But my point is that I'm asking who determines the mental state of a citizen who's trying to exercise their Second Amendment right. Dan's saying it shouldn't be the government. We all agree on that. Generally speaking, Mike, you say that it's the parents that are responsible. I think we all partially agree on that. But in this case, the parent was almost trying to pull their own little red flag law bullshit.
Right.
And we definitely all don't agree with that.
Absolutely.
Well, it's, liberty has a cost. You know what I mean?
Like collateral damage kind of thing? Or?
No. Liberty has a cost. So we have this idea that we can live and let live, especially on our side of the political aisle, and things are going to more or less work out because we feel like we don't want to be interfered with. So we want to do people the same courtesy and not interfere with them. Because that seems fair. Excuse me. And fair enough, right? Like people talk about our democracy a lot. I'm not sure what that means because this is a constitutional republic, but I'm not thrilled with it. Democracy doesn't give you control of your own life. It gives other people a modicum of control over your life. You have one out of however many votes there are control out of your own life, actually. So I kind of forget about democracy a lot and think about liberty, and I wonder what it is that it takes to secure liberty. And it is constant vigilance. Yeah. It is, it's the premise of my show, Citizen. You can either bitch and moan about your rights and wait around for somebody to secure them for you, and when they do, you will be a subject under their rule. Or you can secure them yourself by performing the responsibilities required of you, and you'll be a citizen of that country. That's how it works, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this mom has some lofty ideas. Maybe she's right, but she didn't have the temerity or the emotional constitution to actually follow through on it. So she didn't actually believe what she said, right? She just wanted somebody else to do the work for her. Right. And that's how people fucking die. That's why Ben Franklin said a republic, if you can keep it, right? Because it requires constant attention.
And I think that's it right there. That's the nail on the head, that most people want someone else to do the work for them. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the hard part.
Because everybody's a lazy pussy nowadays, honestly.
Yeah, but the way you handled it,
but that's it.
The way you handled it is correct. I mean, I don't want to make the statement that it ends with the gun store owner, because that's not fair. You don't know this person.
No, I don't.
I agree. That's not.
But there's, if somebody walks in dressed like Antifa and I own a gun store, I'm probably not selling them a gun. You know what I mean? Like that's just call it profiling if you want, but that's just being minimally observant in my opinion.
But you do, in this
Minimally
business, in this business, you do
Sure.
profile people.
You have to. Yeah, you have to. And look, you're running a business here. It's not a therapy business. So, it's good that you did what you did. In a perfect world, maybe you grab this kid by the chin strap and say, "Hey, fucking, what's wrong, buddy?" You know what I mean? What are you using the gun for? It's not a completely out of pocket thing for a gun seller to say something like, "Is this your first gun you bought? What do you plan on? Is it more for target practice, or are you going hunting? What are you doing? Depending on what type of weapon it is, maybe get a feel for what they're doing." Because I think people that walk in are twitchy and nervous, you're going to be able to tell.
Yeah, and it's funny that a lot of lefties will think that gun store owners are just itching to just sell any gun to anybody that walks the door at any time. They're fucking clueless. Zach has said this a number of times. We used to have a lot more left-leaning people on the show to come on, and Michael would basically rip him a new asshole about guns because none of them knew anything about 2A, gun laws, gun rights. They didn't even know how to shoot a fucking gun. And then they would come in and try to argue their fucking point. And they were always wrong. I'm talking 99% of the time. There might have been one time one of them said something with a modicum of sense.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you don't want to be the kind of person that uses single source information. For example, that's an intelligence community statement, but you don't want to. If everything you know about the left comes from Fox News, then you're a fucking idiot. And if everything you know about the right comes from CNN or MSNBC, then you're a fucking idiot. You're not doing your job as an American citizen if that's how you're behaving.
Now, let me ask you this: what do you think about gun stores using the software? Because there's a software out there right now that's been tested. All right, you know about it? Okay, so a software where you type the person's name in, and it proves, goes through their social media and stuff like that, and where you can decide whether or not you're going to train a person, take them to the range, or put them in a class, or sell them a gun, or whatever. Something like that being optional for the gun store to actually have access to.
Does it give them a score?
It does.
Yeah, but it's pass fail, right? Yeah. Right. So it's like it may scour public social media posts and it'll say,
and that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, China.
Yeah.
I thought of China.
So yeah, I've seen this software before, and oddly enough, the people developing it call me a lot to ask me like, how angry does this make you?
Right.
I'm like, pretty angry.
So we're probably talking about the same people.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're good people. They're trying to figure some shit out. Correct. I think to give this is the difference. When you start developing tech or some kind of theory or ideology to try to make things better, if you're doing it from the position of giving the state more power, then I'm against it. I don't care what it is. The state, like, if plutonium started growing on trees, right? And the state wanted to come in and regulate who was allowed to pick it. Fuck you, get out of here. It's none of your business what I do on my own property. But giving private business people and the private community the ability to make better decisions collectively, I don't think that's intrinsically a bad idea. Right? There's something there, but you got to be very, very careful. What happens when, for example, when a gun store closes and the ATF just swallows up all that data? Right? Like, what if this company goes bankrupt and because it's licensed somehow through the ATF or some other organization, all that data now becomes property of the government? That is not okay, right? So there's never a yes or no answer to stuff like this. It's always nuance. But the examples I've seen with social media, you still have the ability as the gun store owner, if somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to burn down the fucking whatever Capitol building," and it's a funny meme or something, and you're looking at it, you're like, all right, cool, this guy's obviously not intentionally gonna go burn down the building so I can sell him a gun, right? There's still, ultimately, it's gonna come down to the individual, which is the way this whole thing's supposed to be set up in the first place, right? Like, I know we monolith a lot, but we're not really supposed to.
You're not going to be able to stop everything, and something's going to slip through the system. We're talking about suicides earlier. 22 veterans commit suicide a day. And we're talking about that. You can't prevent suicide. There are people that are dead set and convinced that, this is something they're going to do. They're going to take their own life, and then they're going to do it. And they can hide that from you. They may become settled with that, and maybe something that they're definitely going to do.
Well, that's the ultimate property right is your own mind, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to think and say and believe whatever the fuck you want. That's where it begins. Forget about your car and your land and stuff like that. If you can't even think what you want to think, that's where it becomes a problem. So we can't do anything that invades on that right. You know what I mean? Right. Not without a process to reconstitute that right immediately. If it's, and I don't even like the red flag stuff is stupid to me. I do wonder though, if, let's just say, this is a question for you as a gun store owner, if there was some way to identify with a certain degree of certainty that somebody was going to do something stupid, right? What responsibility would you have to do what with that information, I guess?
Oh, I call the police. And we've done that. I've had someone come in here saying that, hey, they're going to go do X, Y, Z, and we've contacted authorities, showed them the video, and then, let them decide what it is. I actually have, as early as this week, I've had someone that worked for the hospital not too far from here that came over to the hospital to thank us for something that we did like 5, 6, 7 years ago, where someone walked to the gun store and said they were going to buy a gun to go and shoot and kill everyone at the hospital. And so we didn't sell that person a firearm. We actually contacted the police and we detained them, mentally inside, well, not physically, inside the gun store until police pulled up outside. And they were able to detain this person, and they figure out this person was actually trying to do that. They actually had a list, of people they wanted to kill and all this good kind of stuff. They kind of figured that stuff out. And it takes people getting involved in doing little things like that.
Yeah, but not that involved, right? I mean, It doesn't take very much. So the people that end up doing mass shootings and stuff like that, when's the last time it's happened where there were no indicators prior? I mean, almost
always a sign.
80% of the time.
Always.
I think the stat is 80%, 80-some% of the time the FBI has actually been in contact with this person over the last year or 2 years.
And that's pretty serious.
Yeah.
If the FBI,
that means they've made a credible threat, and the FBI has come to visit them about it.
That's serious, and the FBI is investigating you.
So clearly that process is broken. Like we're not. I think the process as it stands now is somebody makes a threat, authorities get notified, they go talk to the person, and somehow because they have magic brain powers somehow, like the FBI can do anything competently, they just determine the guy's not a threat anymore, and then he goes and shoots up a school a year later. But what exactly was done in the meantime to figure out why the kid felt that way and deal with that issue, right? Dad's not around. Right. There's problems at home. He's been sexually abused. There's something that's going on there, right? And we just check the box, right? We check the box and move on with our lives. So, that's not going to solve anything.
And there's always a case where family members know something's going on. They know that something's wrong with, John, Billy, Sean, Jaquan or whatever, and we don't do anything, I know, that's right, because someone's going to get upset. So they Diego. Always know. Diego, Jose.
Hispanic in there. Jose, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Jesus,
Muhammad.
Oh,
all right, I'm done.
Here we go. Zach, I haven't heard from you. What do you think?
I mean, you could always get those Minority Report chicks and just have them determine the future, right?
Put them in a bathtub and give them some marbles.
Pre-crime, yeah. Yeah, that's always good. But all of this, any conversation about anything that's wrong in society comes back down to what are we willing to do to stop it. And when I say we, I mean people at the lowest possible level. The system of federalism, the 9th and 10th Amendments of the Constitution are pretty explicit, right? If it's not covered here in the Bill of Rights or in amendments passed by the federal government with a 2/3 majority, then it is up to the states or lower courts to decide, or people individually to decide. And there's a price to pay for that. Again, you have to pay attention. You have to. Here's the best way to stop. If you're trying to reduce the size of government, for example, which I think any conservative or libertarian should automatically, or not automatically, should always be trying to do. Excuse me. The most effective way to reduce the size of government is find problems in your area that the government is solving and go solve them your fucking self. Right? Box them out. Don't let them come in because, I'm not a huge Reagan fan, but he was pretty smart about some things. What's the scariest words in the English language? I'm here from the government. I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Here to help you?
Yeah. It's like, no, you're not. You're here to hold this need I have over my head so you can bilk money. You can extract wealth from the citizenry, and so you can hold it over my head and have power over me. That's what you really want. So the road to emancipation begins with responsibility. Hard stop.
And your podcast, what are some of the topics that you guys cover?
Well, I mean, it's a comedy show, right?
Okay.
So we just say a bunch of fucked up shit all the time. No, what's the old saying? Sacred cows make the best hamburgers.
Right.
You know.
What's the most fucked up thing you said recently?
There's no way you got Alex Jones beat. Did you see the what he said about
the Bill Gates
the Bill
challenge?
Gates challenge? He said, Bill Gates, I challenge you to put a gun in your mouth and blow your brains out. And if you do that, I'll do it the next morning.
Oh, my goodness.
And cover yourself in gas because you support the Taliban and blow yourself to bits. I mean, that's pretty fucked up.
I did that. So that Parkland deputy sheriff guy, right? Yeah. The resource officer that was at Parkland.
Oh, that pussied out.
Who was just found not guilty.
So when that first happened a couple of years ago, I was pretty adamant that he should blow his brains out. Yeah.
Okay, I guess you are right up there with Alex Jones.
But it's, I mean, you know, it wasn't even tongue in cheek. Like if you can stand outside cowering next to a pillar while children are getting annihilated inside, you should put a gun in your mouth and blow the back of your brains out. You don't deserve to be alive. Like your job as a man is to stop that from happening, even if it costs you your life. The same thing with the Uvalde people. Like I constantly in my head, I see that dude whose wife was in the classroom being kind of casually held back, like he's a sophomore in high school trying to fight at the playground. But it's like, oh no, you're okay. And he's like, oh, my wife's in there. Dude, I would have killed everybody in that hallway if one of my family members was in there and they tried to stop me from going in, right? Fuck that shit. So, you know, whenever you alleviate us collectively of responsibility, like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. Here's your participation trophy. It's okay not to win. It's okay not to try. It's okay not to put yourself at risk. It's okay not to have standards. That's the kind of shit that happens.
It's okay not to save the kids.
Yeah. Like your life, at what point ever in human history has it been the appropriate thing to do to put the old in front of the young? You know what I mean? Like to put the old before the young. We did it with this vaccination stuff. Giving kids an unnecessary vaccine because we wanted to protect older people. When do we put young people at risk to benefit older people? That is exactly the opposite of how society is supposed to function. And we've constantly done that in almost every regard. And it's because of this boomer generation, this self-care movement that's gone on. Like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't work 60 hours a week and grind yourself into paste. I'm fine with that idea, but the way that it kind of... The way that it kind of slid into this, like, I deserve this. I deserve this. You don't deserve shit, motherfucker. Shut your goddamn mouth and go to work. You know what I mean? It's like, that's how we built all this. That's the only reason it stays upright is because people are willing to do hard work.
Yeah, that the putting the elderly in front of the children, or in front of the children at the front, kind of sort of reminds me of that Soylent Green movie from the 70s, where they have old people that are voluntary euthanasia, voluntary suicide, whatever you want to call it, and then they grind them up into the green paste and feed them to the kids or whatever.
Yeah, there's another good one called Logan's Run about that same thing.
So the reason I brought that up, though, was because I made a joke about that film in a street interview I did the other day, and I said, yeah, let's kill the elderly and feed them to our kids. Obvious joke. That's insane.
It's very Snowpiercer, right?
Yeah, but so I got, that leads us into sort of the next part of this. I got a notification from Instagram that I was now shadow banned, and the only people that can see any of my content are the people who already follow me, which basically takes me out of the For You page, the Explorer page, suggested reels. I reached, in the past 30 days, my Instagram account has reached 480,000 people. All right, I have 4,000 followers. That's insane. And a lot of my content is conservative. Or libertarian, really. So they obviously saw that, marked my account. Same thing that happened to our Facebook page, because we reached, like, during January 6th, we shared a thing of Ashley Babbitt on Facebook. We reached millions of people. We were one of the first people to share it. Anyways, that's my long-winded way of saying that now our show and Michael has been Michael's been censored through the fucking into next month. now I got hit with something. You guys, I feel like, have had a lot of issues dealing with this kind of stuff. I don't know any specifics, but if you got specific instances of being shadow banned or censored and how you deal with it, or what you think the proper way to handle it is, let's talk about that. Because guns is something that is very, very difficult to talk about without getting completely throttled.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we certainly face it a lot. Even with when I was with Black Rifle, we faced it a lot too, just because the word rifle's in the name of the company, but doesn't sell guns, right? So Pinterest wouldn't let us have a monetize. They wouldn't let us run advertising on Pinterest
Because
the word rifle is in the title, and they literally wrote us back and said, "Well, if you could just change the name of the company." I'm like, "Oh, sure."
What?
We'll get right on that. Like, fuck off, dude. You know?
Yeah, let's change the name of the gun shop. Central Texas
Paddleboarding.
Squirt gun works.
You can't even say gun. No.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's why we're going to the letters of CTGW because of that reason.
See, that's why Michael's a genius.
We're taking guns out of it, so we're going to CTGW.
There's kowtowing to this, Michael.
You don't have a choice because it's in all fairness.
Black Rifle Coffee didn't. Come on.
They are a private company, and that's their platform, and so
Mike, turn that mic a little bit towards you.
Okay, it's their platform, and we are, saying, hey, as a terms of services, as a policy, whatever we're agreeing to, their rules, we're playing in their game.
We had this debate in the 1950s about telephones, though, right?
Yeah.
Well, at what point does something become a public utility?
Right.
At what point does a modality of communication become a public utility? It's an interesting debate to have because I'm not really thrilled about the idea of telling a private company what they can or can't do.
Yeah, but at this point, the social media apps are the public square.
Sure.
I mean, they really are. The Sherman antitrust laws need to be used to
they're also not private companies. They're publicly traded companies, except for Twitter, right?
I didn't even really think about that.
None of the other social media companies are private.
I'm just coming at it straight from they control the method of communication, dude. The only way I can pick up followers now or make my message known is to literally march up and down 6th Street with Zach and go talk to people and put a mic in their face and organically get them to follow me, which is totally, I mean, the playing field is completely lopsided at this point.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. Whenever things start to go wrong, the smart move to make is to shrink your scope and work on your fundamentals, right? So like, let's say you're a baseball player and your swing's all fucked up. You don't go play home run derby to fix your swing. You break it down, you hit off the tee, flip drills, you do all this stuff to get your swing back incrementally to where it needs to be. And we are fucked as a country right now. As a society, the Western civilization is at best controlled by a corrupt aristocracy at this point, right?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
So maybe the game is to not play the game, right? Maybe it is to speak to people more locally than it is to use. Certainly you can make more money if you go viral on the internet or have large social media presences and stuff like that. But at what cost are you doing that? How much of your intent of your original message is being eroded away so you can fit into these places? You know what I mean? Now there's something to be said for having a presence there, certainly.
So I just need to get more crafty with it, basically, to be able to circumvent the algorithm. That's actually what Ian Smith told me. He was the first person I asked. I was like, dude, you've dealt with this on a massive scale. I'm dealing with it on a micro scale. And he said, dude, you just got to get more crafty with how you're doing it, man. You're just, and I was like, okay, so I got to start using my brain as much as I'm using my big ass mouth.
Just start bleeping out those words that aren't curse words that might trigger the system there. When people will know what you're saying.
Like what words are you talking about?
Like, let's beep the elderly, right? Well, that could be a few things.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, I guess I'm just being sort of crass and a dumbass about it.
Well, there's also, the difference between...
well, how do you deal with guns? That's what we were talking about. How would you do that with guns? Central Texas Arms Works? I mean, I feel like that even then they would figure that out. Or even come and talk it.
CTGW.
Bleep out the word gun and put a little gun emoji over the person's mouth at the same time.
I don't know. There's also... a lot of people have had a lot of success leaning into the culture war too. You know what I mean? I think it's a problem to try to sometimes. It depends on the industry you're in, but sometimes it becomes a big problem to try to fly under the radar because then you can get fucked with and they don't have to answer to anybody because you're keeping yourself quiet.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So I think
you're right.
going berserker mode from time to time, you know what I mean? Like the way that Alex Stein goes into these city council meetings and stuff is sometimes he crosses the line with stuff, certainly. I don't care because I think it's funny, but
no, but Stranger and Alex Stein are good buddies. They do the same thing with the city council.
Primetime Stein, the guy up in Dallas, that has a show. Yeah.
Okay.
He's sort of
Is that the one that like
Stringer.
sings and raps?
Yeah.
He's retarded.
He's really
It's so funny though. But yeah, I mean, being noisy, helps sometimes. It reminds, and everybody's kind of playing their role here. It definitely reminds people that you're still around. I don't think, as you put it, kowtowing is necessarily the best idea. Sometimes it depends. Like sometimes you have to wedge yourself into situations on the sly and then fucking, pull your shirt off and there's a Superman tattoo on your chest or something. But sometimes you just got to come out kicking too. I don't know. We've had a lot of problems though, because we do long form content. We do hour to hour and a half shows pretty much every day, multiple shows sometimes per day. And finding a place to host those that we don't get constantly fucked with has been a problem.
Right. Have you guys put anything on Rumble or Band?
No, but Rumble, there's a lot of our stuff on Rumble because people repost it over there, yeah. But we haven't put anything over there because we don't really make any money on video anyways. We have large audio sponsorships, and we own a couple of our own companies that we use the show to promote as well, so that helps. But I've seen a lot of my buddies get fucked with a lot, especially over the last 6 months in the gun community. Brandon Herrera, the AK guy, Donut, a bunch of these guys, they've been getting fucked with pretty hard. And to be honest, I don't know why, because mostly what they like, some of their stuff is just fun gun stuff, but a lot of it is about weapon safety and stuff. You know what I mean? Quite a bit of it, actually.
Well, I mean, our thing is all gun law and the legalities of gun ownership and best practices. I mean, that's what Mike talks about. So why we don't even really show. I mean, I guess the background we have guns now in here now, but before we were on the radio show, we never really had firearms on the show. So I don't know. I just don't really. They just know who Mike is because he's suing the ATF.
No, they don't. They said they didn't know.
Yeah. Can you believe, dude? Tell him that story. This is insane. You'll get a kick out of this.
They said they didn't know. So we're suing the federal government for a couple things. One is the bump stock, so that basically saying that the ATF cannot create a right law. That case has gone to the Fifth Circuit. It's on its way to the Supreme Court.
And there's case law at the SCOTUS level from OSHA trying to push COVID mandates on that now as well. So, I mean, it should be, as soon as you hit SCOTUS level, it's going to be decided pretty quickly.
Right.
Because they've already set a precedent for that.
So we have that one, and then we also have the one that's going against the ATF, where they're going after small mom and pop gun stores, trying to shut them down. And people are going to see all around the country. You don't notice it, but eventually you will. You're going to see gun stores just disappear because they're going after them on technicalities and getting them to shut down on a number of reasons. And so you're going to start seeing your favorite gun store all of a sudden one day just disappears. And so we filed a lawsuit against the ATF for that, because they're just shutting down.
What is the lawsuit exactly? What are you challenging?
So basically, they're going after gun stores, saying that when a gun store makes a small little paperwork error, like say the 4473, a customer walks into the gun store, fills out the 4473 on that form there, they put something wrong, like instead of putting the county, they put the country, instead of some places they put just information in the wrong box. There are 100 different data points on that form, 100 different ways where you can get stuff wrong. And so we're saying that's not going to prohibit. That's not a person who's walking to the gun store who's getting a gun illegally. They're just making a mistake on the paperwork. They're not obtaining the gun illegally. And so they're shutting the gun stores down for, small little errors like that they're finding in the paperwork and stuff. And so they walked in here, a couple weeks ago and did an inspection. Right. So complete inspection, 3 agents, stayed an entire week, and they're still not done yet. So we're still, We got
Wait,
another.
what?
No, still not done.
They're still here.
Still not done.
They can come back
And
at
so-
any time, right?
Still not done. And so they, go through everything, all your paperwork, everything, check your inventory, all that kind of stuff. And, we have like 13,000 transactions that we've done, that they're going through and flipping through all the different pages and checking every single 4473 for mistakes and stuff like that. So, whatever they find, they tally that stuff up, and then they think it's enough, then they'll try to shut you down for that reason.
But what's enough?
Because
in 18 and 21 U.S. code has very specific requirements that
That's our
designate a
argument.
crime, right? Like you don't get to decide that it's a crime on the fly.
Correct. There are a couple different things, and knowingly transferring to a firearm to a person who is a prohibited person, or transferring a firearm to someone illegally, clearly, that's what
Straw
everyone
purchases,
thinks
stuff
about.
like that, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not what they're finding. What they're finding is, like I said, small little mistakes.
Yeah, and I don't. It doesn't really matter. Some people may make the argument that it's just regulatory bloat, bureaucratic bloat. They need to justify their existence somehow, so they go out and do stuff. It doesn't matter if it's with good or bad intentions or ambivalence, that you can't violate people's right to self-protection.
Right.
That's pretty much the most fundamental right you have. But that the more conspiratorial side of me does believe, because I mentioned it earlier, but anytime one of these gun stores shuts down, whether it goes out of business or it gets shut down by the government, the 4473s all go to the ATF and they digitize all of them, which they have over 1 billion records now. And it's completely illegal. That is a gun registry that is against the law.
We literally just talked about this. It's a de facto gun registry.
That's the fight that I had with them, when they walked in here, is trying to get information, wanted to put me certain things on a drive. Hey, can you give me this on the drive or give me that on the drive? And I refuse to do that.
Yeah.
It's just like, let me try to figure it out. I'll let you know, not just delayed and heat and hot or whatever. I was very hesitant and wanted to do that. I said, look, I gave it to you on paper. There's no reason for me to give it to you on a drive. I gave it to you on paper so you want to check the inventory, you can check the inventory on paper.
So not only are they breaking federal law, they're also trying to get you to do the work for them.
Do the work for them.
Right.
Mike, what do they say when you refuse?
Can't get into that. So, but what I will say is, that I did it on paper.
Fair enough. I understand. Suing the DOJ and ATF is
Fuck the ATF, right? So think about it this way. What if there was a federal agency whose job it was to monitor any of the other constitutionally guaranteed rights, like a Department of Speech?
Now we're getting into Orwellian territory.
Because that's what they tried to do about a year ago, right? With this, what was it called? The Misinformation Bureau. God, what the fuck was it called? Remember that crazy lady?
What do I need to Google here to find the name?
It was a subdivision of the Department of Homeland Security, and it was going to be the misinformation. I don't remember exactly what it was called.
I'll find it real quick.
But yeah, that was the point of it. They were going to stand up a division inside of DHS.
It was the Ministry of Information, something like
It was
Orwellianly named.
Disinformation Governance Board?
Yes, that's right.
That's
Disinformation Governance Board.
That's
yeah.
literally the Ministry of Truth right there.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? Is that what it was called?
Yep. So it got proposed, authorized by the committee in Senate, and it was on its way to becoming reality with this woman who was a complete lunatic who's never had a real. I think she was like a high school teacher at some point. No offense to high school teachers, but what the fuck? And the government, like literally within the last calendar year, the government tried to stand up a Ministry of Information, right? So and people, I think on both sides of the aisle pretty much collectively said, no, we're not doing that. And that is what's stronger, 5 or 1, right? 5, 1. And that's the difference, man. That's the cost of liberty. Sometimes you got to put your differences aside and make a fist with all the people around you and punch the government right in its fucking face. And just people hear stuff like that and they think, oh, fucking violent conservatives. You don't have to do anything violent. All you have to do is say no and refuse to budge. Like you don't have to do. That's what this during the civil rights movement, there was a lot of talk made about passive resistance, right? I'm sure you've heard this phrase, passive resistance. A lot of people talked about it, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King Jr. It doesn't mean that. It means, so it's based on an Indian principle called satyagraha, right? And what it means is I'm going to do the right thing and accept the consequences. That's a literal translation. So yeah, there's a tone of passiveness to it, because I'm not going to get into a gunfight over my ideas unless it absolutely comes to that. I'll just stand here and say what I think. And if you got a problem with it, then I'll deal with that, right? But that's what it is. It's not just, it's not sitting in and refusing to move passively. It is doing the right thing. And if somebody's got a problem with it, then that's their problem, right? And if enough people, and it doesn't even take a majority, all it takes is a plurality of people. If enough people say no, then it becomes uncomfortable, right? The worst thing you can do to a politician is give them bad press, right? That's crippling to them. It's crippling to them for elections, for fundraising, all this stuff. That's the thing that they fear the most, is bad press. That's why people like you being assholes out on the street is pretty effective, to be honest, because it makes them look like idiots a lot.
Thank you.
But that is the most power you as an individual have, saying no to bullshit. Because every time you accept, it's just 2 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like an abusive ex.
Yeah. It's just a 10-day waiting period. It's just 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Fuck you.
The dog agrees. All right, so let's go back to talking about guns. So what about training in the military, and also training in schools? Should we get people? Should we get ROTC have a stronger presence in schools, and also should we have go back to having I guess different shooting teams and stuff like that, like we used to have back in the old days?
Well, yeah, certainly. You know, I'm not a huge fan of the NRA and its current constitution, but the reason it started in the first place was to provide free or low-cost gun and gun safety training, right? That was the whole purpose. And it was because at the time, everybody kind of knew that guns are a tool and we're going to teach people how to use them responsibly. That's how we're not going to outlaw cars. That's stupid, right? I'll take it back a step though. Should the federal government be in charge of schools? And if so, why? Why would the state be in charge of education? Why would the state be allowed to tell you how to raise your kids and educate your kids? That's a problem for me immediately. But again, the solution is always found in effort. So no matter what the debate is about the two-way from the right and the left, it always seems to come down to the left thinks that the regulated militia is the National Guard, and the right thinks that it's the population, right? Generally speaking. Now, I don't know why we would set up a well-regulated militia to protect ourselves from threats, foreign and domestic, if the domestic state was in control of it. That doesn't make sense, right? That's fucking stupid. But would you consider the general American population a well-regulated militia at this point? So where's the solution? The solution is to, instead of, look, you guys are fighting a war on two fronts right now because of constant government encroachment. But the other front of that war is to get more people armed, trained, right? Like I personally don't think we should have a standing army. I don't think it makes sense. Really? Like if you've got, we have, let's say 1 million active duty soldiers, sailors, airmen, marine, and Coast Guard and Space Force. Now, what the fuck that means. But about 1 million, I think, active duty. Why? Why do we need that? Why do we need to make it easy for Congress without any kind of vote, or the president without any kind of vote or authorization, just to send 100,000 people somewhere to fight some war that we didn't fucking agree to? You know what I mean? It used to be that anytime you wanted to go to war, you had to raise the money for it and had to go find the people for it, right? And it's a pretty good roadblock to bullshit wars, because people, unless you have a fuckload of money to pay them for it, or if it's an extremely good cause like World War II, for example, they're not going to sign up for that shit.
But if you don't maintain the training, it's going to be hard to win the war.
Right. So my solution would be to, the money that the states send the federal government for the Department of Defense, cut that down to about maybe a quarter of what it is now, and spend the rest of the money inside the state, running civilian training program. So if somebody comes to our house looking to start a fight, we'll be ready. But I don't think, how has anything we've done outside of our country benefited us since World War II?
Can't do all that secret stuff, if you cut down that budget.
Sure, yeah.
CIA can't do what they want to do.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? So we had bin Laden cornered in Tora Bora in late 2001, and he magically slipped away. A 6'6" guy on fucking dialysis slipped through JSOC. That seems likely, right? Are you fucking kidding me? We have ISR around everywhere doing thermal image scans of the Pashtun Valley, and this guy just skirts out into Pakistan. Not one fucking prayer that happened. The reason he was allowed to get out is because that war stops right there if we kill him. There's no more war. There's no Iraq. There's none of that shit. There's no Syria. There's no Yemen. There's none of that. No Libya. No Arab Spring. None of this shit that made trillions of dollars for the military industrial complex if we smoke bin Laden with a JDAM. Right there, right? So that's the kind of that's what you're dealing with when it comes to the government. It's all smoke and mirrors so they can fucking reach into your wallet.
Now, what about getting back to schools and having shooting teams inside the schools and things of that nature?
It's a good question, right? I don't know the answer to that.
I'll do you one better. Back in the 50s, they used to teach firearms safety in public schools.
Oh, we had a rifle team at my high school.
Well, I don't even mean
inside the
ROTC.
Team.
Like they would teach just the general education. Part of the general curriculum was firearms safety. Just like they used to teach what was that shit when they would teach you how to cook and
home ec.
Yeah. Or shop class. All that stuff needs to be brought back. All the trades. I think gun safety should be taught in public schools. I think that, and if it's not literally taught in a public school, I think the schools, just like driver's ed, they should be sending kids to Central Texas Gun Works, to Michael Cargill, to teach gun safety. I'm dead ass serious.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Like, I don't know that I would feel great about, I guess it depends on who it is. If it's gun experts coming into the school to teach that, then yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'm always hesitant to think about like arming teachers. If it's military veterans or former police or something like that, let them carry a gun. Let them have a fucking Uzi in their backpack. You know what I mean? Because I don't think, not that it's impossible to take some English teacher and teach them, basics of weapon safety and most importantly.
But a gun is not for everybody.
Correct. But most importantly, like target acquisition and understanding what your target and what's beyond it, things like that. Because you don't want somebody that hasn't been in a high cortisol stress environment with a weapon before being inside of a classroom when somebody's shooting, because they're going to make mistakes. You know what I mean? The reason we don't make mistakes in what we do is because we do it 1,000 times. And I'm not sure an English teacher has the ability to stay up on their training like that.
Yeah, some green-haired liberal woman who can't figure out what her gender is. Maybe she shouldn't be the one owning a gun. Well, what we're talking about here is arming teachers. I mean, if that person wanted to go get a gun in the modern world, Michael, could they get a gun?
They could. They absolutely could.
I mean, if I was a teacher, I would want to carry a gun.
Fuck yeah.
But I've carried a gun. I've carried a concealed weapon every day of my life for, 21 years now, every single day. Oh, well, with some exceptions when I was traveling and shit, but I would say 99% of the time. And it's never obvious to anybody. And that's kind of the point, right? I mean, it's there for rainy days. You know what I mean? It's a tool like anything else. I would like to see that, though. Yeah, I mean, it used to be private organizations kind of handled that, the Boy Scouts, NRA, when it was doing the thing that it was supposed to be doing back in the day. I would love to see something like that.
Back in the day, how long ago was the last time they did anything that was...
Here's what they're doing now.
It started to shift in the late 1970s.
Yeah.
But for a good
while.
From the 1940s to the 1980s or so, it was a pretty solid organization.
They now have outreach people now. So they have people that are in certain areas that are going out and reaching out to different groups and organizations and gun stores and training courses or whatever, and trying to get those people to, they're trying to do like this grassroots thing.
Yeah, and it's working in a lot of places like Maj Touré. I'm sure you know who he is, right?
We've had him on the show.
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. So he's I don't think anybody's been more instrumental in the urban black community about getting them trained and armed than him, and that is the fastest growing gun ownership demographic in the country.
Yes.
White liberal women is second. right? Which is kind of funny, to be honest, but it is what it is. But yeah, that's an important part, and it's, you know, it's somebody like Maj, or I've got another friend, Ricky Lynn Camden. She does stuff with women a lot. Getting these people who weren't traditionally part of that community involved in it, I think, is a big step, right? Not only just for getting them aware and trained and stuff, but then usually those people tend to become kind of a firebrand for the movement.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're it's almost like a train the trainer or a force multiplier kind of situation.
And then that's when you see all the hypocrisy of the left wing anti-gun people, because the minute that you get somebody that's gay, black, Republican like Cargill, all of a sudden, you know what happens?
Really?
They start saying, "Oh, he's a white supremacist." First thing off bat. Oh, he hates gay people. Oh, it's just out of control.
The black face of white supremacy. That's my favorite. That was Larry Elder, right, when he ran against Gavin Newsom for that recall election in California for governor. The LA Times called him the black face of white supremacy.
Oh, they literally said that?
Oh, yeah. They said that exact phrase.
Oh, I thought you were embellishing.
Oh, no. I wish that. I mean, if I could come up with jokes that good. You can't outdo reality. That's the problem.
What is it? Truth is stranger than fiction? Or
doing comedy these days, I feel like I just say what's going on and people laugh. I'm like, I can't take any credit.
Yeah, it's not even a joke anymore.
No.
We're just reading headlines at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I would love to see. I think we should do away if, you know, I don't think the public education should be a thing in the first place. I think it's ridiculous that the state would be involved in education, but it is. So get rid of the foreign language requirement in high school. Why the fuck does that exist? You went to high school, right? I assume everybody went to high school. Do you remember anything you learned in any of the foreign language classes you took? Bibliotech?
And baño,
and pantalones and shit. Like, you don't remember shit.
Cabron.
Chi-chis.
You took 4 semesters of some foreign language. You don't remember any, at a minimum.
I went to a private Catholic school until I was kicked out, and I did actually. I took Spanish from a young age, and my son is Mexican, and his families all speak Spanish. So I do actually know Spanish, but I think I'm an outlier. I get your point.
You are an outlier. So why don't we get rid of that stupid requirement and have, I don't know, teach kids how to do their taxes. Teach them how to do their taxes. Send them, instead of spending an hour and a half 3 times a week learning a language they're never going to use in their life, maybe you send them to a fucking soup kitchen and let them experience what real hardship looks like.
I've also done that, but that was also court ordered. So.
Well, you know.
I took the path less taken, and it taught me a lot. Yeah,
so it's effective, right?
No, actually, yeah, I would agree. When I was down there, I was feeding I was the guy that made the eggs, and I'd whip up all the eggs, and once I had the eggs done, because those are done first, I would go out and just talk to these people. I mean, I was like 18, dude, and I would go out and talk to these people, and one time I took some acid and I made these eggs, and I went out and I was chatting with this older guy. His name was Bob, and he was like 80 years old. My grandfather's name is Bob. And he said, I'm old enough to be your grandfather. My blah blah blah. And I was like, dude, this guy, literally, like you know, I was in that headspace on acid, and I realized, like, oh man, like people really do have dramatically different upbringings and paths they take in life. So like empathy is a very important thing to have. I think that was the first time in my life I really thought about what it was like for somebody to be in some. To put myself in somebody else's shoes.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's difficult to communicate with somebody that has a widely disparate opinion than you do on something, especially something that you hold near and dear. But, you know, understanding their background and how they arrived at that conclusion is like showing your work on a math problem, and the math teacher can walk by and see that's exactly where you fucked up. Now, if you fix this, the downstream stuff is going to fix itself. But you can never do that unless you drill down into that person's life a little bit.
So how do we let's apply that to moms again? What's that group, Mike, that hates you?
Moms Demand Action.
Moms Demand Action, or
like
moms
demand like action sports, like Travis Pastrana, Nitro Circus and shit.
What do you mean?
Like action sports, like
they mean like action.
Moms Demand.
Oh shit!
Moms Demand Action.
It's just a bunch of horny moms in their 40s.
No, it's a bunch of anti-gun moms.
Your mom has the most confused look on her face right now.
Moms Demand Action, yeah, or Everytown USA or whatever. Like, how do we? Because clearly these people, it's not just a matter of disconnect through the dialogue and there's no constructive communication happening. They won't even talk to us. But
They don't know any laws. They don't know anything about guns. Guns are bad. No more guns.
Yeah. How do we get to the point where we can develop a sense of, I don't know if empathy is even the right word, but how do we get to the point where we can have constructive conversations with these people at this point, or are we too far gone?
I like to, to reel them into our conversation and kind of play them against themselves and play chess with them a little bit. So what I did was with Moms of Men Action and the Texas Gun Sense, whatever they want to call themselves, all this little group, the Shannon Watts, organizations out there, is for my case, the bump stock case, they were able to write a brief to get the Supreme Court to take up the case. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Even though I disagree with what your stance, but I'm glad you wrote a brief to ask the Supreme Court to take up the case. So you have pro-gun people, anti-gun people, that are calling on the Supreme Court to take a look at this case. You got the federal government that's saying, the Department of Justice said, hey, you need to take a look at this case, Supreme Court. And I think using them, in that way, you just have to play chess with these people, not play checkers with them.
It is, well, I'll say two things. It is helpful to ask people thoughtful questions to which they don't have answers. You know what I mean? Here's the most important part of that kind of discussion is you need to be magnanimous. If your point is to dunk on somebody and make your point and celebrate, then you're a fucking idiot because you've done nothing at that point. All you've done is further entrench that person in their position. You've accomplished absolutely nothing.
So that's funny you say that because I think I used to do that a lot when I was, maybe even just like 4 or 5 years.
It's very satisfying
because I'm an ego fucking maniac. Yeah. And Michael would always tell me, he's like, hey, calm down, relax, play chess, not checkers. And I was always like, yeah, whatever, dude. I'm playing 7D blackgammon. Ha ha, I'm hilarious. Look at me. I'm funny. Attention on me. And I realized, look, I'm just an asshole. So really, we need to have empathetic conversations like what Mike's talking about and really actually ask a question, listen to the answer. It's just hard sometimes because some of these fucking people are insane.
It is, but you're talking to, especially with this particular organization, you're talking to a mom who's trying to protect their kid.
Yeah.
And that you're like, if you think just casual logic and providing some statistics is going to solve that argument, that's not happening, bud. It's just not going to happen.
And I think the Texas legislature, they dealt with that badly this session because now you're looking at Ted Cruz is running up for re-election and he's going against a person who was representing that area in Uvalde, and his whole purpose in life is to raise the age limit for AR-15s to come up with some restriction on firearms. And now he's the leading person who's running against Ted Cruz now. He's got an ad. He's announced he's running for U.S. Senator. And so he is going to be, that person is really going to put it to Ted Cruz. It's going to be a lot difficult. I think the space in between that which Ted Cruz is going to win is going to be a lot smaller.
What was it, 52-48 against Beto last time?
Yeah.
I mean, Robert O'Rourke. Excuse me.
Robert Francis. It's going to be real close.
If you pay attention to the demographics, people who have moved here over the last couple of years, new registered voters, we're not quite as lopsided as Florida. So Florida flipped by about 1 million Republican registrations over the past 4 years. I think Texas is a little bit smaller than that, maybe 600,000. But it isn't just the Hollywood liberal that's moving here. So I'm not terribly concerned about stuff like that. But as far as having a conversation with somebody who's deeply emotionally invested in the outcome of the conversation, you have to give them a pathway that makes them feel good about the decision they're going to make. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a mom that's worried about their children getting fucked with. I might make the point that, well, first I would ask, do you think it's even possible to get every gun off the street? And any reasonable person is going to say no to that. And I would follow up with, well, wouldn't you like someone like me to be out there armed to make sure that if something like that does happen, because the average police response time is like 18 minutes and everybody's dead by then.
Mike talks about this all the time. And also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but the police are not legally obligated to
No, the Supreme Court ruled on that.
Yeah.
And just this
Police
Florida
have no duty to protect you, only general duty to enforce the law.
Yeah, maybe we should start a petition to get them to remove the protect and serve off the side of the goddamn cruiser now.
That's why
not
that
part of
police
the job
officer in
description.
Florida in Parkland, got off on how he got off. He had no duty to go into that school to protect those kids. He only had a general duty to enforce the law. So his job was, as far as he saw it, was stay out there, provide a perimeter, wait for reinforcements to show up, even though that's not the plan. That's not what should have happened. And we talked about that, during Columbine. Ever since Columbine, what's supposed to happen is the first police officer that arrives on the scene, you grab, 1, 2, 3-man teams or whatever. You go in and you step over dead bodies and you stop that shooter. You execute and you stop that shooter. Don't worry about who's been injured or anything like that.
That shooting that happened in Allen recently
Oh,
at the
perfect.
mall, the
Yeah.
outlets.
He heard gunshots. He grabbed his rifle and he's listening. He's moving. He's listening. He's like, okay, the shooter's on the move. He's moving. This cop he's running straight to where straight to danger. He's going straight to where the gunshots were, and he stopped that shooter.
Yeah, it was just him. He ran over there. He was, almost out of breath.
And some people were criticizing him. They were like, well, why is he on foot? How come he's not in his vehicle? Well, in your vehicle, you can't hear shots.
What?
Vehicle's also a fucking death trap. I
Yeah.
don't know, like, if you're out there,
Yeah, he was being criticized.
You're out.
What the fuck? How do you? All right, whatever. It doesn't matter. What were you gonna say about the vehicle?
it's a death trap. It's a bullet magnet. It's a big target to get shot into, and bullets bounce off metal pretty easily, especially rifle rounds, especially 2.23 and 5.56 rounds. They're bouncing all over the place inside of the air. Like fuck that. Right? There's no way I'm staying in the vehicle. That's the first thing you should. Anyways, we're not here to talk about tactics.
It's just kind of incredible that somebody would criticize a guy that stopped a fucking school. I mean,
Well,
what the fuck?
Everybody's got something to say.
Dude's a hero. He's a hero. His training kicked in. He ran straight to where he was listening for the gunshots. And he executed and stopped the shooter. I mean, it was a textbook.
So I want to unpack this thing with the moms again. It's just something that I think we, like you're talking to a person who's trying to protect their child. They feel like their child's in danger and they feel like nothing is being done about it. So they're trying to find something to do. Just because you don't like somebody's solution to something doesn't mean there isn't a problem that needs to be solved, right? Like if you, during Occupy Wall Street, during these BLM protests over the last couple of years, just because you don't agree with the methodology or the solution or the cause itself doesn't mean there isn't some underlying issue that needs to be addressed. So discounting it out of hand is not the smart move. So from this perspective, the solution is, how do we as responsible citizens and gun owners make moms feel safer, right? And it's not going to include us limiting our rights. We know that that's not going to happen. What other solutions do we have there? I mean,
you train them.
Yeah, certainly.
You grab a mom, you take her to the gun range, you train her, teach her how to shoot.
This is part.
Teach her how to work with a firearm.
This is part of the therapy for, particularly for female victims of abuse, right? Tim Kennedy does a program that does exactly this. They take them into the gym and teach them fucking jujitsu, right? They teach them methods to protect themselves, and it is part of a therapeutic process that returns agency back to that person, right? Their honor and their agency has been ripped away from them. They're a shell of a person now. I can't even defend myself and my family. Who am I, right? That's how they feel. Right. So how do you return that to them? And in the broader sense, with people that are worried about access to guns, I understand that they come from a position of ignorance a lot, but it isn't complete ignorance, because there's a lot of fucking dummies walking around on the streets. I'm not talking about people with guns. I'm just talking about people that are competent enough to wield a weapon and be aware of what's going on around them and have the temerity and the instinct to intervene if somebody else is being fucked with, and they decide not to do it, right? Like they choose every day to go about their life, to stuff their face with Hot Pockets and keep, their iPad on, instead of looking around at other actual human beings who are suffering and doing something about it. So part of it isn't just winning the debate. Part of it is realizing what your culpability is, and then taking steps to, like, you just take that chess piece off the board. If their position is that there is no well-regulated militia except for the one that's controlled by the state, then the solution to that is to start programs, start training, that makes a like every swinging dick, every male from 12 years old onward should be trained on weapons, just in case somebody decides to invade our country. Right. Every other country on earth does this. All the Scandinavian countries do it. Israel does it. China does it. Russia does it. Every major country on earth that has, some kind of foreign adversary does exactly this, except for the United States, the most powerful and richest country in the world. Now, why is that? It doesn't make any sense that we're the only one that doesn't do it.
And the key thing to that is we got to get back to parenting, being parents and parenting our kids and being the head of our household. Mm-hmm. So if we don't do that, then we can't get to the other part.
Yeah, but it's, this is the reason people will avert their eye. They see somebody trip in public and fall down, and instead of looking at it, they'll avert their eyes. You know why? Because they don't want to go over there and help. Right. Because they're embarrassed, or they don't want to spend their time helping those people. And that bystander effect, as it's called, is cancer. Psychology is viral. You know what I mean? Yeah. This trend of nihilism we have in the West right now, and this proclivity we have to think of ourselves first instead of thinking about. So it used to be in Western society, and this is the case in a lot of other societies, but we're talking about the West, so I'm just going to say the West. Your legacy was defined by, I'm going to have some kids, I'm going to get a good job, and I'm going to provide my kids with a slightly better life than I had. That was the entire purpose of your existence, right? I'm going to take care of my family, and I'm going to give them opportunities that I did not have. And I don't think people think that way anymore. I don't think parents that have kids now, because we are in a period of relative comfort now. So you don't have to think like that anymore. Like, I went to college 4 times. I've got a master's degree. I own multiple businesses. When I have kids, I don't know how I can make their life better than mine, because my life's fucking dope. You know what I mean? But what do you do though, right? I think you have to reduce that down to the lowest common denominator. Okay, my life is good insofar as comfort, right? Insofar as resources and things like that. So how can I make their life not more comfortable, but better, right? And it goes back to this idea of purpose. That's the thing that ends up defining all of our lives in the end. We don't regret the things we did, and at the end we regret the things we didn't do, typically, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't spend enough time with my kids, I didn't take enough vacation, I didn't do this or that. Usually we regret the things that we didn't do, and the stuff that will end up defining us down the road in our life, the things that'll stay with us, the memories that'll stay with us. Every important thing that you ever do in your life will be in the service of other people. Everything you ever do. So, I think we have to really, at multiple levels, start reinforcing that idea again, because that used to be the standard in America, right? It was like, we believe that if we work hard enough, we can be successful, and we believe that because this is fucking America, right? There's an old saying from a 1st century Jewish or Roman historian, and he said, men didn't love Rome because she was great. Rome was great because the men loved her, right? And when you reduce the idea of what it means to be American, it's not politicians or the government or even our geography. It is the idea that individual liberty and personal entrepreneurship are the ultimate inoculation to tyrannical bullshit. And the fact that liberty only exists if it exists for everybody. That's what we believe in here. And you love that idea, then things will begin to improve.
We have an election coming up. We're going to change gears and get into this election cycle. And you got to remember, in Texas, you got Ted Cruz, who's running for re-election. Against Ted Cruz, you got State Senator Roland Gutierrez and also Colin Allred. And I think, they're going to give Ted Cruz a run for his money, this election. And whether you like Ted Cruz or not, I don't know what you think about him, but you got to think, what's your interest and what's your goals and what do you think you want to hold on to? And you got to remember those people that are out there are trying to take what's dear and near to you. And if you don't stand up and let your voice be heard and go vote this next election cycle, things are going to change slightly. And they may change, not in your favor. So we got to definitely make sure we pay attention.
The boiling frog metaphor, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't kill the frog immediately. You put it in water, and the water gradually gets hotter, and until it's boiling and the frog is dead. That's kind of the way Marxism works. It's in bits and pieces. It's just this, it's just that, it's just this, and all of a sudden
incremental.
Yeah. Now I'll say this: rooting for politicians is like cheering for the referee. Doesn't make any sense to me. I like you should have an organized list of principles that you believe in that are fundamental to your life. And when the politician moves into that lane and agrees with you, you should support them, but only so insofar as the scope of that belief goes.
That's right.
Do not put yourself in a position where you're defending shitty behavior because you've called yourself a Republican or you've called yourself a Trump fan or a MAGA person or whatever. All these people are fundamentally flawed in some way, as are all human beings, right? And we have gone from a bottom-up system to a top-down system because we capitulated sometime in the early part of the 20th century and started taking sides instead of on principle, on political party or personality. It is a personality cult, right? And ultimately, you do put yourself in a position like so many people defend Trump still, despite the bump stock ban, despite keeping Fauci in power, despite the Operation Warp Speed stuff. And like, look, I support, like if he was running against Biden today, 100% I'm voting for Trump.
Correct.
Obviously, right? That's not even a question.
But is he the best candidate on the Republican ticket?
Time will tell. We'll see when they're all on a stage together and they can call each other out. I think that'll be fun. I mean, Tucker Carlson wiped Mike Pence out the other day. Vivek Ramaswamy was pretty smart. DeSantis was pretty smart, but we'll see, right? Like, words are just words. I don't believe anything anybody says, especially not a politician. I will say, for Trump's sake, he is the most insulated from any of the internal politics of Washington of any candidate I've ever seen. Maybe Ramaswamy, but he just doesn't have the clout yet. We'll see. Anything could happen, but I don't know if he's the best candidate or not. I know that he's done some things that I find morally objectionable, but I don't know that any politician has it, to be honest. What do you think about it?
As we get a little closer, we'll see there's got to be some more candidates that step up to the plate. I got to see what DeSantis is going to do. I got to see a little more from him. Got to see if any more candidates actually step up to the plate. Any females out there? Because I like the governor from was it North Dakota, South Dakota? What's her name? Kristi Noem.
Noem. Yeah, she's got some problems up there right now. I don't think she's going to end up running.
That's sad because I kind of like her. So
I did too until look into her dealings with eminent domain and letting some of her campaign donors steal land from people. It's not great, especially in a state like North Dakota.
So
but everybody's going to have a flaw, right? Like you're not going to find.
There's not going to be any perfect candidates out there. And my thing is I have tunnel vision. I think the Second Amendment, because with the second I can protect all of my constitutional rights with that. So at least I have that. And I
well, how do you reconcile that with Trump then? I mean, he did. I don't think he's a two-way guy. His son is.
I don't think he is either.
Don Jr. is. I know Don. I know Eric as well. They are definitely two-way people.
Right.
I think Donald J. Trump Sr. I think he is on the periphery of that issue.
He's not a two-way person. He actually opened the door for the ATF to start doing what they're doing right now. And so that's the bad, and that's one thing that people have got to realize and got to just come to terms with.
Yeah, but once you swallow that Trump pill, a lot of people have a hard time, admitting that maybe they were wrong, partially at least, because you're right, Mike. The situation that you're in and the situation with 2A stuff right now actually is pretty largely due to the bump stock stuff. It is,
yeah, and Trump admits he's wrong too on that issue. So
No, he kind of doubled down.
No, he doubled down.
I'm sorry, his son admitted or says pretty. So he runs what is it called, Field Ethos? You familiar with that? That's Don Jr.'s company, and they have a podcast and stuff. And he doesn't agree with any of that stuff either. A lot of the family has agreed. I think the story that I've heard from the family and some people that work on the campaign is that maybe he, in hindsight, he feels like he was naive about some things. Like he assumed that the FBI would just do its job and that the CIA would just do its job. Like these are people that work for and love America,
You know
right?
what that is, right? That's that classic boomer mentality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important, though, to be able to believe in institutions. It is. It's important.
Institutional trust is dead.
It is now, yes, certainly. But it's important for us collectively to be able to believe in that stuff. But again,
I agree in the ethos, but it just doesn't exist anymore.
But it doesn't exist because we haven't built it again. it'll be upon the American citizenry to do this again. Like there aren't a bunch of Harvard grads out there or former members of the FBI or current or people in the intelligence community that are going to rebuild trust in American institutions. It will be regular people that do that. And that's what it takes sometimes. So I guess I understand the naivety part, that excuse. Doesn't make it excusable though, right? Like somebody has to be held to account for this stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's the only way that we move forward is if everybody kind of agrees on what went wrong and we start making corrections to it.
Do you think Don Jr. is going to run in the future?
I doubt it. He doesn't want that stress. Who does? Would you want to run for fucking president?
Yeah, but the people that don't want to do it are usually the people that we need, man.
Yeah, that's one of my quotes. It's the people who desire power very rarely deserve it. And the inverse of that's also true. But how do you get somebody that doesn't desire power to take it on,
What I do know is they're going to figure out a way to an out for Biden, and I think if he gets reelected, I know he's not going to survive those 4 years.
There's no way, right?
Yes, no way.
I mean, he's in late stage dementia right now. He has vascular dementia, which is, the thing about that particular brand, vascular dementia, is the more your body is stressed, the worse it becomes, essentially, right? The less blood flow you have in your brain and stuff like that, it's going to deteriorate more and more rapidly as time goes on. So he's done.
I know.
The question is,
they're trying to figure out right now, are they going to throw someone else in the ring right now, or just wait till he gets reelected and have him resign?
Yeah. Throw Hunter in
there.
Then
they have to deal with Kamala Harris, who they really don't like.
Nobody likes her. Yeah.
Yeah. So they.
Well, right now they're kind of like. They're kind of like a baseball team in between the All-Star break and the trade deadline, right? Like they're waiting to see how the next couple of weeks go to see if they want to buy or sell. I mean, I don't think they want to push Gavin Newsom into this race yet. I think they're saving him for 28. Although I do think he will be the candidate in 28, 100%.
Really?
Yep. They're definitely grooming him for it. I think he's actually going to run for Senate in California this term. But they don't have any legit options. But the question is, if like DeSantis' campaign is tanking. He just fired half of his staff today, actually.
Oh wow!
Okay,
that's not good.
Yeah, how did that happen out of nowhere?
It's not. It's never. It's never out of nowhere. And it's mid-level staffers. He didn't fire his campaign manager.
No, I just mean like I feel like there was a lot of momentum for DeSantis. A lot of people that I know who voted for Biden were like, we really like DeSantis, and then it seemed like just sort of fucking fell off.
I think it's a mirage, to be honest. I mean, the kind of people that support a guy like DeSantis aren't the kind that show up to rallies and with red hats on and pump their fists and shit. They're people that have jobs and are busy and shit, and they're older, probably.
Like, he seems like
but they vote.
Guy.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
But they do vote. Yeah.
Well, that goes back to the whole. Does our vote? But I don't want to say it because we're on YouTube, but you guys know what I'm getting at. That goes back to the whole election. Starts with an F, ends with a rod. You know what I'm saying?
You don't have to tamper with any kind of machine if you can tamper with somebody's mind. You know what I mean? Like if you can constantly pump them full of bullshit on this screen all day long and lie to them with with no recourse against it. If you're able to block major stories and things like that using the prime communication devices we use,
the propaganda.
Like you don't need to get too conspiratorial about it these days because we know exactly what happened.
That's fifth generational warfare.
Yeah, there may have been some extra ballots printed. There may have been some other stuff.
Well, I don't want to talk about this.
There's always going to be that.
I don't know to what degree. It's always
on both sides.
Yeah, there's always some kind of shit going on, but I don't know to what degree. But I know to what degree our minds have been manipulated since let's say middle 2015 for sure, right? So yeah, it's a concern.
The only reason I'm so touchy about that specifically is because I've had a video taken down, just completely wiped off the face of the earth. It was an interview with John McAfee, and we talked about that and also the COVID stuff.
That's sad. He's gone now.
Yeah, and now it's there's no way for me to recover. But it doesn't matter. Anyways, so let's just move on to the next topic, or how if we want to wrap it or whatever.
Well, kind of tell us your podcast and how can we find it?
Yeah, well, you can find Drinking Bros on YouTube. We have a Patreon as well that we do some of our weirder things on. Okay. So tomorrow we do 2 shows a week called Fake News, and we just talk about news stories and stuff like that. The one on Monday is on Patreon because we do a bunch of fucked up shit on there for fun. And they don't really mess with us too much. YouTube, they hate us over there. I think they actually just demonetized our channel again.
Oh, wow.
But we don't make any money there anyways. We get like probably 20 or 30 million views a month or something like that and make about $1,200. So we don't really give a shit about that. You know, it's still, we just use it for search engine optimization, to be honest.
How can they do that? That's crazy. That's wild.
They can do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, you know, fair enough. It's their platform, although it is a publicly traded company. But yeah, you can find us there. And then my other show is Citizen. I talked about it before, but that's it's a more serious show. Every show is a guest, and we talk about a list of principles that I feel are you know, important, you know, in modern Western life. Things like I'll support and defend liberty against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's the first one and the most important. But again, the premise of the show is that you can bitch and moan about your rights and wait for somebody to secure them for you, and you'll be a subject under their rule, or you can secure them yourself by performing the responsibilities required of you, and that's what makes you a citizen. It is that implicit act that turns you from a subject into a citizen. Just, you know, being aware of what's going on around you and being part of, you know, solutions. Find ways to box the government out of your neighborhood, right? That's the best advice I can ever give to somebody that wants less government intrusion in their life.
Oh, we'll see. Either that or take them to the court.
Oh, yeah, that helps too sometimes.
Take them to court. So we'll see what happens. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot from you. I actually listened to a lot you had to say today, and I got a lot to think about and process, you know, and go back and listen to the show again, you know, and process it some more. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man, anytime. Yeah, we'll have you on mine sometime soon.
All right, awesome.
Whenever you got time.
And as we like to say, as always, more guns equals less crime. You go out there and you buy yourself a gun. You've been listening to Come and Talk It with Michael Cargill.